Thank you everyone for joining today, the July 2025 ACES Quarterly. Today we have guest speaker Mary Klein Stively, who will be sharing about strengthening community with compassion. Okay, so Mary is a relational leader who fosters opportunities for partnership, growth, excellence, and strategic change. She has been with ChildStrive since 2010, initially serving as a Chief Strategy and Programs Officer before becoming CEO in 2021. Her career began in mental health, providing treatment to survivors of traumatic brain injury, where she honed her skills in people management, change facilitation, and program development. Mary holds a Master of Organizational Development and has experience as an independent consultant for not-for-profit organizations. This role introduced her to the early learning community and Little Red House, now known as ChildStrive. Mary is dedicated to ensuring that ChildStrive's values are reflected in their work with families, colleagues, and the community. Mary is a licensed restorative practice trainer, offering training and support to partner organizations, and helps lead the CARE initiative in Snohomish County, which is working to building a more trauma-informed restorative community. Thanks for being here today with us, Mary, and I'll pass it off to you.
Thank you. And thanks for listening through all that. That is like the most uncomfortable thing in the world to have someone introduce you like that. It's the most uncomfortable thing in the world for me to have someone introduce me like that. So, but thank you. And thank you all for being here. I'm thrilled to be with you. Is everything, you guys can hear me okay? My volume's okay? And you can see my screen? I'm like, okay. Teams is like I'm very comfortable in Zoom. I'm not as comfortable in Teams. So bear with me with that. There's been many a meeting, I'll just own it, where that little red button that says leave attracts me to push it when I'm trying to push a different button. So I'm going to try really hard not to do that today. Okay, so I am thrilled to be here with you today. A little bit more about an introduction that I would give for myself is that I know I'm a white woman. I'm in a position of authority. I have other intersectionalities that have a lot of position of I can't even think of the word, but whatever the word is that I'm trying to think of, what my point is, what I wanted to say is I absolutely welcome and would invite you to call me in the event that I step into something that is outside of my place. So please feel free to call me in the event that you feel like you need to. The other thing that I want to say before I get started is I like participation. So don't be surprised when I ask to hear your voice or to put things in the chat or that kind of thing as a way to engage in the conversation. I think this is always more rich when we can have conversation versus just having someone talk at you for an hour and a half. All right. Let's go to the next screen. So for our time together today, here's what I'm hoping to cover is that we'll describe the relational window. That's also referred to as the social discipline window, if you've heard me talk before. And then we are going to see how that could impact your life, both professionally and personally, as well as discover some restorative tools to help put that relational window into action. And with that, I'm going to start with these slides. I'm going to start with leadership. So I would invite you all to look at these quotes, read them, and I would love to hear what is striking to you. If there's one that's more striking to you, what is that one and why is that? So leadership is an action, not a position. Leadership is not a rank or a position to be attained. Leadership is a service to be given. Leadership is communicating to people their worth and potential so clearly that they are inspired to see it in themselves. Leadership is not a position or a title. It's an action and example. Okay, so Jessica put in leadership as an action and an example. Be the leader you wish you had. Anybody willing to say which one is kind of striking to you and why? Elizabeth put in be the leader that you wish you had. That is one of my favorites as well. Anybody want to bring their voice into the room about why it's
This is Elizabeth.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, be the leader you wish you had really strikes me because, you know, when there's injustice in the world by people that are responsible for us or guiding us, you know, we can either choose to resent them, be bitter for that, be angry. And I learned that looking back at that and saying, this is teaching me how not to lead, how not to parent, how not, and kind of seeing the value in that poor leadership can be just as compelling and important as the good leaders.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, this is Jessica, and I wrote Leadership is Action and Example, and it just has me thinking about when I was younger and you did like team sports or you were on a team and your team captain or your coach kind of had to show you by example of, what to do in the soccer game and where to go and the rules to follow. And I kind of just, because of that experience, carried it with me always, I think, into my professional life. And it helps me value someone in a leadership role that can lead by that example. And then they also walk the walk and talk the talk.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. And Melissa, I saw you had your hand up and it went down, but you're on mute.
I couldn't find my mic for a second,
Oh.
sorry. So I really like a leadership is not a rank or position to be attained. Leadership is a service to be given. When I think of the great leaders throughout my life, they were honored with the fact that they were a trusted person, a trusted servant, rather than like, oh, I'm just a leadership type personality. Like it's something, that you attain through example. And I think it's an honor whenever somebody looks up to you, or the people that I've looked up to, they really have felt like it was an honor and it was to be given rather than just to be had.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you. And then somewhat Angela put in the David Marquet quote, because to help people find their strength. I think that's great. Yeah. Anyone else? So here we are talking about restorative practice, and I start with leadership. Why would I start with leadership? Any thoughts? I'll tell you, my thought on it is that we're all leaders, right? It doesn't matter what work we're doing. If we really want, like the care work, if we want to live in a more trauma-informed, restorative world, we all need to show up authentic to ourselves, and we all are leading in some way, shape, or form, because it's not a position or a title. We all can show up in how we lead both our own individual lives, as well as how that influences the work that we might do with other people. I think that leadership and restorative practice really go together, because for me, restorative practice is all about relationships, and leadership is all about relationships as well. So if we're really putting the human first, that influences how we show up in our leaderships, whether it is, again, leading our own lives and our relationship with ourselves, or leading with other people. And then I also think that last bullet, when we think from a leadership perspective, what is the relationship between leading with power and control? So really thinking about, oftentimes we think about leadership as that power and control piece versus that human first piece. And we're getting a lot of examples right now of leadership and power and control. So going back to that quote of, we need to show up as being the leaders that we wish we had. This is our time to kind of experiment and play with that idea of how do we show up with who we wish we were seeing out in the world. Any questions or thoughts on that? So with that being, oh, no, that's not the right slide. So restorative practice, for those who haven't heard this before. So my most favorite definition of restorative practice is by Mark van der Veen. He used to lead a mental health organization. He has since retired in Canada. But he says it's a way of thinking and being focused on creating safe spaces for real conversations that deepen relationships and build stronger, more connected communities. The International Institute of Restorative Practice, which is where I have my graduate certificate in restorative practices from, says that it's an emerging social science that studies how to strengthen relationships between individuals as well as social connections within communities. The fundamental hypothesis is that humans are happier, more productive, and more cooperative, and more likely to make positive changes in their behavior when those in positions of authority do things with them rather than to or for. And I love that, because there is not a single time in my life where I made a positive change or choice when someone was doing something to me or for me in that way. It's really about when someone can come alongside me and partner with me, that real change has happened for me. So with that focus on relationship, restorative practices is really, for me, kind of around balancing the humanness and accountability. So I like to think about relationships and really think about reciprocal relationships. So what do mutually affirming, wholeness-centered, and respectful relationships look like, feel like, and sound like? So I'd love for you to think for a minute about someone in your life who you had that kind of or have that reciprocal kind of relationship with. Someone that you really respected, looked up to, that really kind of filled your soul in some way with that relationship. What characteristics would you identify with that person? And you can say them out loud or you can put them in the chat.
Hi, this is Jessica again.
Yeah.
I think when they come from a strength-based perspective and they can see what the individual is like really good at, or being able to provide encouragement and motivation,
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah, great, thank you. Elizabeth put in the chat, willingness to have difficult conversations, give honest feedback, appropriate humor is a trait that I appreciate. I appreciate that trait as well.
When thinking about what it sounds like, you know, I hear a lot of people talking about feedback, and I think honesty is a big one. That, you know, yes, maintaining kindness and professionalism, but at the same time, being honest and giving honest feedback, I think makes it successful.
Yeah. Sometimes I hear that also as like transparency, that kind of thing as well. Thanks, Sarah. Anyone else? Loving, considerate. So I think about, so I agree with the hard conversations, the feedback. I think of someone that I can trust, someone that sees me as my wholeness. Someone that I can laugh with, someone that I can cry with. Those are the kinds of things that I think about. Being present, feeling safe. Nice. Yeah, great. So with that, we're going to look at kind of holding in our minds kind of what those characteristics of those relationships might be. We're going to start looking at the social discipline, or also known as the relational window. So it was traditionally known as the social discipline window and has been having some there's been a lot of work around, is it really social discipline the right name? Is relational a better name? So that's kind of where that's going. I like relational better, but I like to focus on relationships. So this is a classic 2x2 kind of thing where we have along the bottom, going from low to high, the support. And you might think of encouragement, nurture. I've heard grace kind of in that category. I might also call this the humanness kind of element if we're going to put, humanness in there. And then across the side, going from low to high, is the accountability, expectation setting, limit setting. I've seen the word control in there. I don't necessarily like that word, but that's kind of where that's going. So now I want for us to think about someone in our lives who provides lots of support. So it would be across the bottom, way over high, but very little accountability. Lots of support and very little accountability. When you think of someone like that, what do you think of? How would you describe that kind of person? Yeah, go ahead, Kaya.
Maybe enabling.
Enabling, Helicopter parents, yeah. I might go mama bear-like, that's really protective kind of thing. When I think of me in that role as a manager or a supervisor kind of thing, I think of kind of that mama bear, that really protective kind of space. Maybe someone who is very concerned about how you're doing, less concerned about your work, or if you're getting your work done kind of thing. Enabling also fits in there. Anyone else have any other thoughts? So in this model, we call this 4. Can be kind of permissive. So this can show up. One of my favorite examples is when my kids were teenagers and their job was to take out the trash. They get asked to take out the trash and they don't take out the trash. Their father, my husband, would often just take it out for them. So that's kind of in that 4 category, right? You've asked somebody to do something, they didn't do it, so you just take care of it because it's easier than having the battle. At work, that might show up with, there was one example where I had a staff person come to me ask me for some support around an issue. I did some really good coaching actually with them. And then they were having a meeting to have a hard conversation with someone. I asked if they wanted me to show up. They said no. I showed up anyway. That's kind of in that 4 category because what I did there was take away their own voice in that conversation. I did that for them. Right, any questions about 4 before I move on? Okay, so now we're going to go up to the diagonal quadrant from there. So think about someone in your life who is lots of authority, high accountability, but very little support. How might you describe that person? High accountability, high expectations, high limit setting, very little support, very little nurturing. Authoritative, yep.
I feel like that gives me a lot of anxiety thinking about that. That's not really coming from a trauma-informed care, lens.
It is
Yeah,
not, yeah.
I mean, you got to have that support piece, right? If you have
Yeah.
high expectations, and expectations, are just resentments waiting to happen.
Yeah.
So,
So this definitely is that kind of authoritative kind of space, punitive, hypercritical, thinking about themselves, brutal, yep. So in a management kind of situation, this might be where we refer to someone as a micromanager because they're all about the checklist, less about the human kind of thing, like what needs to happen, when it needs to happen, how it needs to happen, that kind of thing. At home, that might be if I went with the whole trash scenario again, taking the trash out. Maybe it goes from asking them to take the trash out to, I don't know, putting the trash on their bed, like, kind of a punishment that doesn't really kind of fit the scenario. There is a time and place for all of these situations, actually. So when you are in a place where you're trying to get to compliance for whatever reason, if there's a significant compliance issue, getting into that accountability, setting high expectations can get you there. It's not going to hold you there, but it can get you there, right? So there's that. Any questions on kind of this 2 space? The thing that I want to say before I move on is these 2 can mirror each other. So you can go into a scenario, like for example, that scenario I gave in the 4 situation where the person was having a hard conversation and I kind of put myself in there. What was going on in my mind is that I was taking care of them, that I was doing it for them. How they perceived it was that I did it to them. So these 2 can you can be thinking that you're acting in that 4 kind of space for someone, and people can experience it as that 2 kind of space. So that's just something to be thinking about, to be aware of. Okay, so now we're going to go to the lower left-hand box, thinking about someone who provided no support or no accountability. What does that look like? How would you describe someone like that? Yeah, go ahead, Kaya.
Possibly like negligent or like neglectful.
Yeah. Negligent, neglectful, ineffective, avoidant. Yeah. This model is going to use the word not and neglectful, withdrawn, passive. Yep. So this can look like a lot of things. With today's technology, it looks like the person who has their phone up to their face all the time and not, I use this old version that advances on its own, and not really engaged. It can be the lack of eye contact. It can be, the teacher in the classroom who's just kind of going through the motions, like the teaching with video kind of scenario, where they're not really engaged. They're just going through the motions to get through the day. That's kind of in this kind of space. As a supervisor, again, it's kind of just the going through the motions kind of thing, the lack of engagement. This one for me shows up sometimes when I get really overwhelmed, and I'm really aware of this. So I get overwhelmed, and how it shows up for me is that I may not check emails, and it's not or respond to emails. It's not really that I'm not reading them, because I actually generally am, but I'm going super fast, and so I'm checking them on my phone, and then it's too long of a response. I don't want to type it on my phone, so then I forget by the time I get to my computer, and so it kind of becomes this cycle for me when I get kind of in that overwhelmed space. Okay, so what I want to say about all 3 of these is we all go to all 3 of these. In some relationships, some scenarios, some life circumstances, these tend to be the fallback styles for folks. So like I just talked about, when I'm overwhelmed, I go to that not space. My kids would say that I go to the 4 space pretty easily around them. My husband is likely to say that I go to the 2 space because when I'm overwhelmed, like he's going to get the checklist of the things that I expect him to do at home, or, whatever it is, especially when our kids were younger. And the same kind of thing happens at work. I can, I go to that 4 space. I'm kind of a mother bear kind of thing, take care, like, but I get so protective that people feel like I'm doing things to them all the time. So we all kind of go into these fallback spaces. So now we're going to think about the high accountability and the high support and what that looks like. How would you describe someone who has kind of holds that accountability, but also brings in that support? Inspiring. Uplifting. And these might also be the kind of people that you were thinking about when that first question about a reciprocal relationship. The transparency, the honesty, the trust, supportive, breath of fresh air. Yeah. Yeah. So in this model, that's the with space or that restorative space. Yeah. High expectation gives you the tools you need to succeed. Helpful. Yep. And this is what we're all aspiring to do, right? These are the types. This is how I would want people to describe me. And we have to remember that we're always human also. And so that's where this line that I just put up comes in that I think is really important. So within the practice of restorative, in the restorative practices, what we often say is that, oh my goodness, that we need to kind of try to be moving towards that with space about 80% of the time. That's not adding on 80% to anyone. It's how can we move towards that about 80% of the time. And so sometimes the healthiest thing that you can do is meet somebody with really high expectations. You need to set limits for whatever the reason why, whatever the reason. The challenge is to then follow up and bring in the support piece when it's time. And sometimes the healthiest thing we need to do is meet somebody with a lot of support, a lot of encouragement, a lot of nurturing, but we can't stay there. We have to then bring in the accountability piece. So for me, one of the things that I've learned through the years in doing this work is, one, how can I meet somebody where they're at, not where I'm most comfortable? So if I'm most comfortable with that 4 space, but I'm working with someone who's more comfortable in the 2 space, wants a lot of expectations and guide rails, how can I meet them where they're at, but still bring in the human piece? How can I do both of those things at the same time? And that's how we kind of move to that restorative space. We often get stuck in what you're comfortable doing, which is not what everybody needs. And you also then misses some opportunity to help build that reciprocal relationship with them because you're just doing what you're more comfortable doing. What questions do you have about that? Or thoughts? Okay, we are going to do a little bit of an exercise around this then. So again, what I said earlier about the 3 white boxes, the 2 not and 4 are really kind of our fallback styles of things. And so what I would like for you to do is to think about in what relationships do the not, to, for, and with show up for you. It's probably different relationships. What areas are you most comfortable with? What are your growing edges? And then we're going to do breakout groups of about 4 people. And I would like for you to just have that conversation, share your reflections. What ideas do you have or supports that you might need to move closer to the with space? How can your team or organization support your growing edges, especially in your work relationships? And when we come back, we're going to have time to talk about your themes or the aha moments that were shared. All right, anybody have anything themes or ahas that you would like to share from your small group conversation? Yeah, I didn't see your hand.
My thought was that in like the situations where like I was kind of in that with space, expectations were like kind of clear from both ends and communicated directly and like kind of like yeah, like negotiated pretty clearly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Thank you. Anyone else?
From Housing Hope, and I was talking about how different it was to work in human services as opposed to human resources.
Mm,
In human resources, I didn't have too much trouble with the accountability piece, but in this work, I really have a much more challenging time not doing things for clients instead of with them.
yeah.
It's not easy, and I think the Recovery Cafe people have an even more difficult time.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So I was gonna say I was late to my breakout room, because it took me a while to get in there. But I mean, yeah, it's hard as a recovery coach. It's not hard. It is one of the kind of ways that we have to traverse this is that sometimes like we need to be that person that advocate and are cheerleaders and celebrate all these things. And then there are some times where we have to be truth tellers as well. So we have to like walk that tightrope of still being supportive, but also like bringing to light, maybe this is not such a good idea, or, maybe, and sometimes we have to let them take those steps and kind of fall a little bit too. But then we have to also be back in that where we're like there for the second chance. We're there for, them leaving and coming back and still celebrating, the fact that they came back. And so, yeah, we do kind of wear many hats in
Mhm.
that situation. And that's what I love about my job. I love, that I can learn to do these things. And at the end of the day, I know I've helped somebody. And one of the things I talked about is like with my relationships, one of the people who in my life who were like punitive, like, had high accountability and lack of support would be my mom. But then like one of the people that I'm with in the relationships that I had was my grandma. So I kind of try to like draw from both when
Mhm.
I'm trying to live my life and do what I do for my career, which I love.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a really beautiful example of sometimes people do need that high expectation stuff, that, that truth teller piece. And sometimes people need a lot of support. And it's really about knowing that and bringing in the other element when it's time. I think that's really what creates some of those really healthy relationships for moving forward. And when we can model that for people, I think that's even more beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else want to share? So what being with looks like. So this is really about when we're really in that with space, we're encouraging, having engaging interactions. We have really clear goals and expectations. We know what those goals and expectations are. This is where we're being collaborative. It's where we're including people in decisions that impact them. So we're not making decisions for people. It's where we're seeing the whole person. It's where we focus on having possibility conversations versus problem conversations. So it's not about going in and solving the problem and doing the quick fix. And it's also where equity, diversity, inclusion are being brought into every conversation. And the thing that for me is really important with this is that engaging interactions. When I think about engagement, oftentimes I hear people talk about wanting to sell what sounds to me like, so they use the word buy-in. And for me, how I hear that is trying to sell someone on something. And so when I think about engagement, it's really around how can we have a conversation about this that it's both beneficial for both of us versus me trying to get you to buy what I'm trying to get you to do. So that's what I really think about with the engagement piece. And what it feels like, so when we can do this, and again, we're just shooting for about 80% of the time, what it does is it creates that sense of hope for folks, creates safety both emotionally and physically, because it creates some predictability, and being seen really helps create some of that safety as well. It gives us a sense that the assets that we bring into the relationship are used and recognized. Again, that's getting to that seeing the whole person piece. There's a lack of us versus them language. And for me, this is one of those things that is one of my red flags. So when I hear a lot of us versus them language, maybe in a group, or if I'm starting to use us versus them language, I know that I'm moving out of that with space. Validation, so it brings validation for folks. They feel, again, that's that being seen and heard piece. And it puts the human over the task. And what that means is that humanness is being brought in. You're still getting to all of the things that need to happen, but you're focusing on the human part versus just the task part. I was in a conversation the other day, and this person had gone on this trip that they had planned forever. It was kind of a trip of a lifetime for them. Hadn't seen them. It had been 6 weeks since they'd been on the trip. I hadn't seen them since then. And so that's one of the first things I did was ask them about the trip. And they were coming to talk to me about something that was really hard for them. And that just, the fact that I remembered, which I was proud of myself for remembering, to be honest, and asked about that, kind of broke that barrier down in a really lovely way. It was like physical, it was visceral. You could see that little thing of just how was your trip being broken down for them. And they came into the room in a whole different kind of human way, which was nice to see. Any thoughts about either of these or reactions? Okay, so for me, this relational window is the foundation of what restorative practices is. It's really all about remembering that we're human and how can we focus on the relationship within every interaction. So with that, within restorative practice, there's a couple tools that help us put this window into action in a different way. And the first one is restorative questions. So these are the questions. These are what would be considered the restorative questions. When you look at these, what do you see and notice? Let's see or notice anything? So what happened? What were you thinking at the time? Or what impact did it have? Who's been affected and why? Hardest part. What do you think you need to make it right? So they're open-ended. Yep.
There's no like sense of accusation.
Yes, they try to be pretty non-judgmental, no accusatory. Of course, you can turn any of those into accusatory with your tone, just as an FYI. Because what happened can turn into what happened, and the accusatory tone comes right in. Yeah, go ahead, Kaya.
I like that it kind of balances like intent and impact. So
Yeah.
like it's not discrediting the impact or discrediting, what the intent was.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Anything else? They also are intended to go from past to present to future. That last question, what do you think you need to make it right, is not a question we tend to ask. We often don't ask what someone needs to make it better. whether that's something, really a mild kind of thing that has occurred or more significant. We don't tend to ask that. So these questions can be used both proactively, which means that they can be used. I'm gonna stay on this because I like the questions better. That they can be used kind of proactively, so it can change the way that you are just having a conversation with someone. My youngest daughter, who struggles a little bit more with identifying her feelings and that kind of thing, if you ask her how her day was, she would have a really hard time answering that question. But if you asked her what happened today, that like changed that, because she could say a good thing, a bad thing, whatever kind of answer she wanted to give. So they can be really used proactively. They can also be used responsively. So if a situation has occurred that between two people, a harm has occurred in some way, these can be used in that way as well. And I'm going to say at a pretty young age. So sometimes when you're using these questions from a responsive way, because harm has occurred, it's a little bit like peeling the onion. So you might go through a kind of what happened, and there may be each of the people might respond to that, but then it brings up more of like what else happened kind of thing. So they can really be used to peel that onion. And I think because they allow people, because there is that space to address issues in that non-judgmental way. The other thing that's really missing from these questions is the feeling word, and that's really intentional. So people who like to talk about their feelings will talk about their feelings when asked about the impact, or what they were thinking at the time. People who don't like to talk about their feelings can still answer that question. So it creates accessibility for people in a little bit of a different way. So these questions are great, and they are something that you could take today and when you get home, and something, let's see, what would be the thing? When I walk into my house tonight, I'm likely to find dishes all over the counter because I have 2 young adult children. And I feel very confident that when they got home from work today, they had a snack or something and left the dishes on the counter. And so like I could, if I chose to, like use these questions as a way to have that conversation with them. But again, it also can be just a different way to check in with somebody about how they're doing, just because of that, what happened today. So let's see if I covered all these. So they're open-ended, they help elicit emotion, allow individual space to explore issues in a non-threatening way, that past, present, and future. And so they can be used proactively or responsively. So what questions do you have about the questions? If we were spending a day together, I would then have you to go off and practice using them. What's really interesting when you use these questions, you're really just trying to listen and not engage in a conversation, to create space for that person who experienced the harm to share their story, which is another thing we don't do a lot of sometimes, is create space for people to just say what their truth is about something in that non-judgmental way. And so that's really a gift we can give people with this as well. Okay, I'm going to move on from questions. So fair process is another tool that is another restorative tool. And this is really going back to the hypothesis of restorative practice, the doing things with them rather than to or for. So within fair process, it's more around individuals are most likely to trust and cooperate freely with systems, whether they themselves win or lose by those systems, when fair process is observed. So this is really, fair process is really a framework when we're thinking about working within a system or an organization that can kind of apply the social discipline or the relational window within that system. So there's 3 principles. The first one, oh, love it when I set things up like this. Engagement. So how are we involving individuals in decisions that impact them? And that's not engagement that's like, I want people to affirm that this is the decision I want to make. It's really creating an opportunity for people to share their experience regarding whatever the decision is that needs to be made. The next principle is explanation, which is really around that everyone involved and is affected should understand why a final decision is made. So we've asked for feedback, we've asked for engagement, we've made a decision. And when we asked for that engagement, we were very clear that we're going to hear from everybody, and then this group of people is going to make a decision about it. And then you go back with, here's the decision that was made and why, and everybody has all of that clear information. And then the last principle of this is expectation clarity, which is really like, here's how the game's going to be played now. Here's the decision, here's the rules. They're clearly stated. We have good, clear objectives and goals so that everybody understands what the new rules, for lack of a better term, are. So this is something that I think is really important on an organizational level, whether it's with employees or with people that we work with, when things have to change for some reason, that when we can apply these 3 principles, we're really giving people agency in a different way to be involved with it. It takes a little bit more time, but also anything you implement is going to go faster than if you don't imply these, take the time to do this in the beginning. These are just some really simple things that can help us move some of that change work forward in a different way. So what it achieves is it helps build trust. It helps voluntary cooperation. People are more likely to engage with whatever the change is. It can help drive performance. People, again, are going to, if it's a new form, for example, they're more likely to start using the new form if they understood the whole process around it and had their voice heard around it. It helps people go from beyond duty, meaning that sometimes when we ask for support or volunteers for something, people don't feel like they have the time to do it. But people are more likely to put in that little bit of extra time if they feel like their voice is going to be heard. And it also helps just create that knowledge sharing in a stronger way. Has anybody ever experienced this kind of a process before? Well, I'll give an example of one. So in thinking about a time when health benefits had to change for our organization. So one of the way that the team, our HR team engaged was really asking folks kind of what they liked about their benefits, what they didn't like about their benefits, what's important to them about their benefits. So a whole kind of questions around the benefits. It was very clear that this small staff group was tasked with the decision about the health benefits. It wasn't just a leadership conversation. And that was very clear when the feedback was gathered. That staff group then took the feedback, made a decision, and then was very clear about the rollout because it meant changing providers. And we all know how hard it is when your healthcare providers, you have to find a new primary care doctor, that whole mess. And so then it was very clear kind of what the rollout was and the time frame that was involved and what people needed to do to make that change. So it's a very simple kind of change. I mean, it's not a simple change because it impacts everybody. People didn't necessarily get what they want, but there wasn't the fight. The feelings weren't there as strongly of, like, why do I have to go through this? Because it was very clear about people's voice being heard and why the change was being made and all of those kinds of things. Any thoughts or questions around fair process? Okay, so then the last tool that we're going to kind of talk about with restorative practice is circles. Here's a few quotes on circles and community. And again, I'm going to ask that question that I asked around the leadership of which one is most striking to you and why. So there can be no vulnerability without risk. There can be no community without vulnerability. There can be no peace and ultimately no life without community. By M. Scott Peck. Circles create soothing space where even reticent people can realize that their voice is welcome. By Margaret Whitley. And if people stand in a circle long enough, they'll eventually begin to dance. By George Carlin. Anybody have a reaction to one of those that they like and why that might be?
I like the first quote. I like that it acknowledges the role that like, vulnerability kind of plays in, communication. In every interaction, you're kind of putting yourself out there. Like every time that you step out and decide to like, reach out to somebody, that is like, yeah.
Mhm.
I think you kind of get where I was going, but
Yeah, thank you. Gianna put in that she likes that one as well. Anyone else want to share?
Yes, this is Rosemary from Housing Help. I like Carlin's statement because it's not at all intellectual. I get it from the gut immediately.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. It is very visceral. It's very, very physical in that regard. Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah, hi, this is Beth. I'm struck over and over again how much we have to pay attention to an individual's needs and wants, right? Like
Mhm.
my reaction to to the George Carlin quotation there would be, yes, dancing is always a good thing. But I know for a fact that the person I work with the most closely in my office, she would be mortified
Mhm.
dancing were involved. She would walk away so fast. And,
Yep.
it reminds me of that other leadership quote at the beginning, something like, be the leader you wish you had, or something like that.
Mhm.
That's kind of like, the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But really, we should be shooting for the platinum rule, which is do unto others what they want to be done unto them.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to find that out. You have to ask them. And if
Yeah.
everybody's not okay with dancing, then let's not, shun somebody by dancing.
Right. Right. I think that's really true. And I actually think that's what circles can do for folks. Because for me, the power of circle in thinking about what circles are, and it looks different if you're in person or if you're virtual. But it really does create that space where everyone has kind of equal seating. Whew. Everybody kind of has an opportunity to speak, and everybody would also then have an opportunity to say what they need, whether that's dancing or not dancing, whatever that might be, that it's kind of all accepted in a circle because it allows everyone to kind of be who they are and what they need. Melissa.
So I like, the idea of circles because so at the cafe, one of the requirements for membership is that you have to belong to a recovery circle.
Uh-huh.
And you are a part of that circle, the same time, same people, same facilitator, same day of the week, every week. And instead of calling it a meeting, we call it a circle, right? And so, and we sit in a circle, right? And so, and it's not you don't have to share if you don't want to, but what I have found in being a part of a circle myself, like when I first became a member and then also being a facilitator, is that at some point, everybody's going to share. It may take a few weeks, but they're going to feel that connection and they're going to feel a part of rather than, like some haphazard, like, meeting in a sense. So I really like the idea of circles, and I think it plays out so nicely in our cafe space every day.
Because the other thing that I think it really does is it breaks down the barriers of control and authority. Because everybody is kind of an equal, whether you're facilitating the circle or not, everybody is part of the circle conversation. And it also kind of, everybody has a role. So it's a different way of being seen and kind of creating that validation for folks. And everybody's assets are going to show up differently in whatever that is. And those are going to be able to be recognized in a different way. Because it can also kind of creates that safety and trust that people want and need.
Yeah.
When you're in a circle and doing like a sharing kind of experience, it also creates predictability. So you don't have to worry about when it's your time to talk. Like, do I have to raise my hand? Do I not have to raise my hand? It's just, oh, it's my turn because I'm next in line. I can talk or not, whatever the rules that are set up for the circle, but it kind of it lets people breathe a little bit different because of that predictability that it creates. And it helps really build connections for folks in a little bit of a different way. So one of the things that I love about like being in person and truly sitting in circle and not like with a table is there's no barrier in front of you, right? So sometimes when we sit in a meeting, we're sitting around a board table, a big table, half the people have their computer up, half their laptop screen up, all of that for me creates kind of an energy barrier. And so when we're kind of in circle or have that circle mentality, we're putting some of those energy barriers down to some degree, which I think is super helpful for kind of building that connection and that ownership that the group can take on. So things to think about, like in some circles, you might have talking pieces, you might not. Virtually, you can still create kind of a circle environment by if it's a sharing kind of thing that you're going in some kind of cadence that you follow regularly to give people that piece of predictability around that. I love circle stuff, so I think it's a great way to even lead meetings. Our board of directors does some circle stuff, like they're doing a hard conversation. They literally will do okay, we want to hear from everybody about how you, like what question you have or thought you have on whatever the topic is, and go around the circle with that, just as a way to create a different level of engagement around things. So one of the most simple circle concepts you can put into practice in anything that you're at is a check-in or check-out kind of circle to start a meeting or end a meeting. What it does is it encourages people to communicate with each other empathetically while actively listening to one another. It helps you get present in a different way. It really is a very simple way to facilitate opportunities to build relationships and kind of create that social awareness, creates connection, allows people to get present. It also allows people to close out from a meeting. So when we do a check-in, it just is that opportunity of thinking about, 80% of the time focused on relationship, it creates that automatically, whether it's a how you doing kind of 2 minutes around the room, or some, goofy question about, I was at a meeting today and the question was, what job do you wish you could have for a week? Like if you could do any kind of wild kind of job, what would it be for a week? Like it just helps you kind of learn about people in a different way. And doing a check out, which I don't do as often, to be honest, as I do a check-in, but what a check-out question does is allows people to be done with that meeting. So especially if it's been a hard meeting for whatever reason, that check-out helps people kind of close out and be done with that meeting so that they can then go on to their next thing without kind of carrying the weight of that meeting with them. Any questions about check-in or check-out? How many people, just raise your hand, how many people actually do check-in or check-out type questions on a regular basis at their work? Okay.
Similar
Melissa.
to what you said, let's check out. And I'm wondering what questions you have used well for checking out.
I have done things very simple like a word of gratitude, something you appreciated about the meeting. It could be, what are you looking forward to next? If it's like we need to just kind of a move forward kind of question, whether that's what are you going to have for lunch, or what are you looking forward to tonight, or whatever that might be. Those are the kind of, it's either the gratitude or the looking forward to that I tend to fall on the most. Other people have thoughts or comments on that? So then the other tool that I think is super helpful, especially when things have occurred within a community, whether that's a community at work or a community as a whole, is a listening circle. And what this is a space that's created to share stories around a specific event. And everybody who's participating in one of these listening circles should have had an experience around whatever this event is. It's not a place for dialogue. It's not a problem solving. It's not a discussion. It's simply an opportunity for folks to share their story and the impact that it's had on them and share that with other people. The goal of a listening circle is to really create a compassionate and brave space in which everyone kind of shares their experience. When you're setting up a listening circle, one of the ground rules that's really important is that everybody is expected to share. Like, you can pass, but we're going to come back to you because it's really important for creating the safety of a listening session that everybody have a story to share. This is a great opportunity to really focus on restorative listening, which is where you're listening to understand. You're not listening to respond, which we spend a lot of time listening to respond to people. And it's not a place of judgment. It's where everybody's experience is welcome. So in thinking about if you were going to do a listening session, it's really about setting up really clear expectations that everybody shares. Generally, you have 3 questions. The first question is the impact the event had on you, the hardest part about that, and then something you can do to move forward. The most beautiful thing about a listening circle is, and you can have many of them happening at once, you want to do these in small groups, but thinking about what the last part that you always ask is what themes emerged. So, and with what that does is creates that connection to someone else. Like, I'm not alone in this experience. Other people had the similar experience. And if you do it, like if you did a large group of people who did small conversations like this, you would end with each group sharing their themes so that the whole group could have kind of this understanding of those common themes. So, like, this is something that I've done at Child's Drive when even something like political was happening that was having a big impact on the families that we work with. We might do it as an all staff, small groups, whole group theme sharing to kind of gain that understanding of that we're really not alone in going through this thing that's going on out there. It's also a different way to do a critical incident kind of review, anything like that. I used them a lot during COVID, in the height of COVID, because that was a common shared experience for folks. Okay, what questions do you have on listening circles and or any comments or thoughts of someone who's maybe had participated or led one of these kinds of circles before? Okay, if you ever have an interest in doing one of these, I do have some resources that I would be happy to share with you, and I'm always available for that kind of thing. Happy to have that conversation with you. Okay, we're winding down. We are going to do a checkout today. By the way, I'm just going to warn everybody of that. We're going to practice the checkout question here. But as we start to wind down, just wanted to share this quote. Every time we interact with another person at work, we have a choice to make. Do we try to claim as much value as we can or contribute value without worrying about what they receive and what we receive in return? which is what I think this is a lot about. And going back to that, thinking about what does the other person need from us in the moment. Okay. And I would love to hear everybody's voice for this one, since we're down to a few people. Please share something that you learned, appreciated, or that you're still pondering from today's session.
I appreciate all the quotes at the beginning of this about leadership, because leadership can be it's view changes from person to person, but I like all of the different ways that we could look at it, you know, but at the heart, it's, you know, that leadership is leading by example, and it's more like being of service, and it's more like being what that person needs. So
Great, thank you. Elizabeth put in chat that checking out is something she's going to start doing with her team. That's great. Who else would like to share?
I'm happy to have another resource in you for restorative circles, because I feel like the one time when we had somebody facilitate that, maybe we missed something, maybe we didn't really do it quite right. And I'd like to be a part of more restorative circles like that, because I think that's how I remember how to do it, not just from, you know, having instructions written down. I'm more of an experiential learner.
Yeah.
And I'm also, well, I still have questions. I have questions. Like you talked about using the restorative questions for a person who has experienced harm. What do they change at all, though, when you're talking to the person who is accused of perpetrating the harm? Or do you?
And they can change a little bit for that. Yeah, we could have a whole conversation on that, and I'd be happy to have a conversation with you about that. There is, like, if you looked at a card, there's cards. Like if we were in person, I'd be giving these to you. That IRP puts out, and they do have one version for the person who was harmed and one version for the person who created the harm. They're just a little bit different, though, but I'd be happy to share those with you.
Great, thank you.
Great. Circles, the questions, listening without judgment. Yeah. Anyone else? Kaya?
I like the idea of the listening circle. It's definitely stuck with me. I'm like, that seems like a really great way to facilitate a hard conversation about like a kind of a communal trauma.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've also used them when we've had like leadership transitions that had some challenges with them. And so it was a way for a team to come together around an experience that they had in a different way, which was helpful. Jessica talked about the window, right? Rosemary?
Yes, I am going to ask somebody if they would be willing to have a restorative listening session with me, because I feel like I have not been heard. And maybe if I set that expectation up right at the beginning, it'll work.
Yeah.
I'm optimistic.
Yeah, good. That's great. Anyone else want to share? Okay. Here's my contact information. I really am very willing to get phone call, text, that's my cell phone number, an email for anything that you might have questions around with this, or if there's resources that I can help you with. I really do love to talk about this and could talk about it for a day. So I think it's a great tool for bringing kind of this trauma-informed work into action. It definitely is a foundation for a lot of my leadership. And so I'm happy to continue the conversation with anybody who might want some support with that. Or if there's tools that, if you want the questions, like email me and I can send you the questions, that kind of thing. Any other final questions before I say my final goodbye? All right. Thank you again so much. I really appreciate your time and the conversation, and I look forward to connecting with you all again some other time.
Thank you so much, Mary, for taking the time to share your expertise. And thank you everyone for attending. A link to a survey has been put into the chat if you can take some time to fill it out. A follow-up email with a link to the recording will be sent out as well. And any resources that you mentioned, Mary, if you could send that to us, our team can send it out in the follow-up email as well.
Okay. And I'm happy for the slides to go out to folks as well when you send that
Perfect.
out. And sorry,
Awesome.
I did the thing that I said at the beginning is I hit the leave button. I was going to stop my share and I hit the leave button. So I did it.
You came right back though.
Came right back. Yeah.
And thank you so much. That
Thank you.
concludes our event. Thank you, everyone. Take care.